Hi, hello, welcome back to Even More News, the first and only news podcast. I'm Katie Stoll, and the vibes are high.
High vibes. Hi, Katie. I'm Cody. That's it.
That's it. No last name for you.
Nope, not today.
You know who does have a last name? Today's guest, a great last name. We have musician, author, returning guest who hosts the podcast Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff, our friend Margaret Killjoy.
Hello.
Ow! Hi, Margaret.
I'm excited to be on the show.
We're
Thank you for being here.
just thrilled to have you. It's always a good day when Margaret's on the show.
Jonathan is also here.
Jonathan is also here. Almost forgot.
Hi. Oh, the vibes are down. They were up for a second and now they're down. How are we going to react to that?
Vibes come back. Well,
You know what? I can't tolerate jokes against Jonathan, even if they come from Jonathan. The vibes are not
I
down.
have
The vibes
zero
would be
Jonathan
down.
tolerance.
If you weren't here, the vibes would be in the toilet.
Oh, I know that.
Okay, well, you know what? Now I changed my opinion.
You all only did this without me for several years. So I know.
And it was nothing but toilet vibes for years.
I was so much more stressed out before Jonathan joined the team.
Oh,
so.
sure. Well, you know.
I'll take all that on like a Patronus.
Exactly. It's yours.
Holidays.
Dementor? Sorry.
No.
A Dementor. Friday, April 11th, National Barbershop Quartet Day.
Oh, that was my second guess.
That was your second guess.
Yeah.
I didn't prepare my notes, but we could start.
Boom, 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 boom,
boom,
boom.
boom, boom, boom. Come
What
on.
part of
Boom, 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 boom.
Classic barbershop quartet. The Lion Sleeps Tonight.
Boom, up. Well, she sneaks around the world.
It's Sweet Adeline.
from-
Lion Sleeps Tonight.
I think we crushed that. On this day, 1938,
We're the new rockapella. Sorry, go ahead.
the Society for the Preservation and Encouragement of Barbershop Quartet Singing in America, SPEBSQSA, SPEBSQSA. Doesn't work, folks. That is not a good
Spebsqua.
acronym.
Spebsqua.
We're going to talk about the news, but first, Margaret, how are you doing? How are you holding up?
I'm good. My dog is whining, and I hope that doesn't come across on the
I
recording.
can't hear your
We
dog
can't hear.
whining.
Great.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no one is listening with really good headphones thinking, why is my dog whining about their own dog because of hearing it in the
Oh,
background.
yeah. I'll double check if there are two dog sounds for all the you listeners at home. If there's two, then your dog's upset.
I propose a drinking game or any kind of a game. You don't have to drink if you don't drink, but
Yeah,
if
can
you
it be
hear
coffee?
Margaret's dog, take a shot of coffee.
Let's not.
Or just trazodone, which is what I should have given my dog before. Never mind. Anyway,
I was just trying to have
Water.
fun. It
Maybe
doesn't
water?
matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I
Take
don't know.
a shot of water.
In answer to the question of how I'm doing, it is a very strange time to be alive, period. Being a trans girl on top of it is kind of complicated, but it's also, I don't know, I'm really good at finding the things that I'm like, hey, exciting things are happening, you know? So mostly bad things, but some exciting things.
Yeah, you gotta
Books.
dig in there and find some good stuff.
You've got books. You've got your whole book career to focus on, too.
It's very, have you seen the meme of like the dog in the house on fire where it's like, I have a book coming out instead of this is fine. That's
No, but I laughed
That's
anyway.
good. That's good.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm not quite in like promotion cycle. I'm in between the Kickstarter and the release. So I have a couple months where I don't have to talk about it all the time, but I'm very like, the world's ending. Buy my book. I don't know. Do whatever you want.
So if you are stressed right now at this moment in time, get one of those.
Yeah.
A book career.
Get a book career.
Or just a book. You know, a book to
Pick up a book.
just read.
Get a book career.
Also, books are sort of bulletproof. Books have dual purpose. They're vaguely bulletproof. This is not medical advice.
Don't go to your rally and you strap books to your chest.
But you could.
Yeah,
Don't.
don't rely on it.
Don't rely on
on it. I would put a bulletproof vest underneath it just in case, but
Yeah.
it's not a bad idea, Margaret.
it. Write a little
All
book
right.
on it.
You know what is a bad idea? Talking about the news.
Surely something about tariffs, but whether it's to
All of it.
there's so many different ways you could be silly with tariffs, and we're just doing all
Insider
of them.
trading, perhaps?
Yeah.
Jonathan, What's the update? Because boy, have we been on a whirlwind. One day everything's down, one day everything's up, and people are gloating, and then the next day, oh my gosh, it's down again.
Yeah, you don't know whether you're coming or going. On Wednesday afternoon, Donald Trump somewhat reversed immense tariffs he had put on every country. He announced a 90-day pause. Yes, Cody.
Sorry, just before we actually get into like the story in the news, I should point out we have an episode of some more news that came out yesterday. It's called In This Economy, and it was written after the election about like, here's what people don't understand about the economy. Here's why people think like the economy is going bad when all these like the numbers go up, and like it sort of talks about like people's feelings about the economy and maybe the economy isn't actually working for people, all this sort of stuff. And we filmed that on Liberation Day.
Yeah, we sure did.
And so in the edit, we're like, I guess we got to like update all these like graphics, maybe put a disclaimer up that says like, by the way, we wrote this before all the tariffs went into place and did all this stuff. So we tried to update it. And then it was that episode with the disclaimer was released on the day that the tariffs were paused.
Yep.
So I don't even know what the episode's about anymore.
What we're going to do is put a disclaimer on this episode. This episode was recorded and researched before whatever happens around Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific happens, and thus you should keep that in mind, the understanding that this will happen and impact other things, and then by the time you listen to it, it will be updated further.
I really thought adding an extra episode of the podcast a week would help, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
It just happens every day.
Yeah, he's destroyed the ability to do content. So he announced a 90-day pause on the tariffs, the reciprocal quote-unquote tariffs from every country except China. China's tariffs, he announced an increase to 125%, which are actually 145%. They failed to clarify that the 125 was on top of the 20, what he called the fentanyl tariffs that were there. So now it's 145% on China. It's 10% on everyone else. And I think that 10% is on top of the 25% tariff on cars and anything else from Canada and Mexico not covered by the USMCA. And when reporters have asked White House staff about this, they are a little bit contradictory and confused about when the tariffs are on top of something or whether they are concurrent
that
tariffs.
No one knows what's happening?
Yes.
Would you say that sort of contradictory nature and the sort of confusion kind of transcends just the percentages and maybe applies also to why the tariffs are in place, what they're supposed to be doing, what the plan generally is for the tariffs?
Yeah. So on Monday, the plan was the tariffs are going to bring back factories and manufacturing. All this industry is going to come back to the U.S. So they won't be lifted until that is accomplished.
Well, they had a week to build a factory, and hopefully they built a factory in that week.
Right.
Yeah, I think we could like learn how to mine new metals here.
Yeah.
In a week or so.
In 48
How
hours.
hard could it be?
Yeah.
And then on Wednesday, after the pause went into effect, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said this was the strategy all along, indicating that they were lying about wanting to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. But then Trump, an hour after that, went out in front of the White House and said,
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid, unlike these champions, because we have a big job to do. No other president would have done what I did. No other president. I know the presidents. They wouldn't have done it.
A little bit yippy. People were falling out of line, getting a little yippy. And, you know, they were getting a little queasy. Part of this that people are starting to talk about, and I'm out of my depth here, but this was actually starting to affect the bond market, which is the safe market, which is not...
Yeah, Treasury yields were going up, indicating that people were pulling out of the bond market instead of going into it as the safe haven. And this is what I think really freaked out Bessent and Lutnick and forced them to go to Trump and say, you gotta stop
People are getting
this.
yippy, you gotta stop
the
this.
yippiness.
Imagine if you went to a restaurant and every single time you went, it was like a random different price that varied by like an order of magnitude. And you're just like, you would just stop going to that restaurant. Imagine trying to do trade with the US where if you buy on Tuesday, it's one thing. And if you buy on Wednesday, it's completely like,
And they're just like, we just want peanut butter. Is it $4 or $400?
Well, and it applies also not just to trade, it's like all politics now. It's like how do you deal with the United States when everything changes in 24 hours, 12 hours?
as an enemy. That's how you deal with the United States when they act that way.
Yeah, right. That seems to be the intention. Oh, yeah, antagonize everybody and change your mind every day, then you become no longer an ally that can be trusted. I guess my question about this tariff stuff is like, is the stated goal now to renegotiate so that other countries lower or get rid of their tariffs so that they're more fair, so that eventually there are no tariffs and we have completely free trade?
Free market?
Is that like what they're going
Well,
towards?
they changed from, once Liberation Day happened, it changed from we want them to get rid of their tariffs to we need there to not be a trade deficit. We need to be buying as much from them as they're buying from us. So we need to buy way more from them, or they need to buy way less from us, which is bad because either we don't get the stuff
right.
or they're not buying the thing. But now they seem to either not care about that, or they're just like, well, it's not worth it because of the banks. The rich people got too mad. We could deal with rich people getting a little bit mad at us, but too mad rich people, no good for us.
There's, I guess, a world where we're duped. I mean, we've been duped a lot. People keep getting duped left and right. But, oh, okay, so he's reversing it. Big man's reversing these tariffs. Everybody celebrates.
He can admit his mistakes.
Also tweets. It tells everybody buy now. Insider trading. We'll get into that. But there is an element of, he's so great. He's reversed it. He's learned his lesson. And yet, at the same time, tariffs go up astronomically for China, effectively changing nothing for us, the consumer in America. Effectively, we're still getting hit we are going to see the repercussions of this in our wallets, in our spending. So there is this idea of like, well, everyone calm down. I did this reverse thing, but actually sneakily, no, we're still fucked.
Which is why the markets tanked again today when all the traders woke up and realized, oh, wait, 145% tariffs on China, and they've placed 84% tariffs on imports from us. That's still going to do all the bad stuff that it was going to do a few days ago.
Yeah.
So Wednesday, 6:33 a.m. Pacific time, Trump posts on Truth Social his "Be Cool" tweet. We're going to be back better. Everything is going to work out well. The USA will be bigger and better than ever before. Just be cool. 4 minutes later, 6:37 a.m., he posts, "This is a great time to buy DJT." DJT, he doesn't normally sign his posts. That would be the Trump
the real
stock indicator. And then 3 hours and 40 minutes later, he announces the tariff pause. And then the markets shoot up, one of the best days for the NASDAQ and S&P 500 in their history. I think the 8th best S&P 500 day, the 2nd best NASDAQ day. And there's footage of Trump in the Oval Office pointing at Charles Schwab and saying, this guy made $2.5 billion.
This is Charles Schwab. It's not just a company, it's actually an individual. And he made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. That's
very important to highlight that a lot of people got rich, although maybe lost some of that money today when it went back down. Yeah, they were already rich.
You know how like we love our working class hero, Donald Trump, and his anti-elite messaging? One of my favorite parts of it is when he brags about all the billionaire friends that he has and how many billions of dollars they make because of his decisions. I think that really speaks to the working people.
Class.
What a grift. Oh my God. I just hope there's a consequence. He mumbles into his microphone knowing that that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we're past the point of consequences, at least coming from the state.
I mean, Adam Schiff's going to open an investigation.
He's very
Oh,
good at
Shifty Adam Schiff.
Pencil neck Schiff.
investigations.
Come on.
All right, pencil neck.
I'm getting results from these investigations. If there's one thing you can trust Adam Schiff,
I mean,
I'm being sarcastic.
no, really, no. I thought you were like, oh, we're real booster for
Finally.
Adam Schiff
Because
here
I'm
today.
such a good actress.
I would really like to see him wriggle his way out of this one.
Representative Stephen Horsford, a Democrat, was questioning U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer while
This is
Trump
great.
announced the reversal. And it did seem as if he had just learned about it himself on his phone.
Did.
And so they're like, is this market manipulation? And he goes, no, it's not market manipulation.
Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan, how is this not market manipulation?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Well, then what is it? Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system.
You're,
That's offshored,
and
all of our factories.
and what has that done?
Offshored all of
How
our
have you
jobs.
done? How have you achieved any of that?
And a number of close allies to the president in Congress have expressed a little bit of dismay that they didn't have any advance notice because they wanted to get in on the action. Or it's very hard to defend, the talking point of we're bringing all this industry back to the U.S. when in 10 minutes, that's not the plan anymore.
The plan is to make billions of dollars.
That's wild. So the idea is that it is possible that he's turning on and off the tariffs literally just to watch the market, the stonks go up and down.
It does
'Cause you
seem
can
as
make
though
money
that
either
is-
way.
Well, because also they've been plundering this whole time. And so it wouldn't be surprising if this was somewhat intentional. Although also as we've talked about, it's all these contradictory reasons. It's chaos. He comes out, he's like, "You're all yippee, so I changed it." It might just work out that they are allowed to.
Okay.
In addition to the mess that they've made, they can take advantage of it.
I don't know. I would not be surprised if this was a part of a plan and it was in the back of their mind the whole time. But I do think there's not nothing wrong. It's just as bad. He made a mess and it wasn't going well. Things are tanking. It's affecting the bond market. So he's like, all right, I'll reverse things, but I'm going to give my best friends a heads up. And, I guess I'm going to just tweet it 15 minutes before. And maybe this is just a happy ancillary side quest to the original goal. But it's hard to say because it's hard to understand what the original goal was anyway. We still don't know, as evidenced by the utter chaos and confusion, even amongst people in his administration.
Yeah, I thought tariffs were supposed to replace income tax. How are they going to do that if there aren't
not.
tariffs in place? If they keep pausing them, how are they going to replace income tax? Or have they abandoned that claim?
Yeah.
Do y'all think this is a takeover or people stripping the copper wires out of the United States? That's the question I keep going back and forth about, is that I'm like, are they just let's just get as much money out of the destruction of this thing as we can? Or do you think that they actually are this is going to somehow work?
I think it's unfortunately a little bit of both, because they are definitely stripping for parts.
Yeah.
But the beauty of doing that is that you whittle down the size of the federal government, and you get rid of everybody but loyalists and sycophants and other people who want to strip the wire. And so then you are able to maintain control. Even if things go poorly, you still have control over the administration and over the all these apparati. It just seems like it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
And all the factions are kind of at odds, but also know that if we do it at the same time, we can kind of both be happy,
Yeah, I think when a hedge fund takes over Red Lobster or some business, I do think they have an idea that, we might be able to run this business more effectively, but then they just can't help themselves but do the real estate trickery to make themselves more money, and then they just end up stripping it for parts, even while they think they might be helping. Trump just genuinely likes tariffs. He's talked about it for decades. He just doesn't understand how they work. He thinks it's good, and then he hired people who agreed to do them, and they're coming up with justifications for them. Replacing income tax, bring back industry, all things that would be good, right? You ask an American, hey, would you like to not pay taxes? They're like, yeah. Hey, would you like it if there was a big factory where everyone could have a good paying job here? Yeah. Okay, we'll say that that's what this will lead to. There is no plan. It's total chaos. But does Trump think it might work? Probably. He's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, because he has talked about this specifically for so long, and it does speak to the fact that, like, yeah, there's 5 different reasons, because there's no reason. The reason is that Trump said we got to do it. So you have all these people sort of forced to come up with justifications for it, and it doesn't really matter what one is from day to day, because as we've learned over the past 8 years, it doesn't matter what anybody says or does.
So
even if it's blatant, don't say that.
it's just wild. Nothing sticks to this man. He can be a total fool, full speed ahead with his dumb idea, and people will carry water for him, and then it'll blow up in his face, and they'll carry water for it. And it's very frustrating. We're all very familiar with the term gaslighting now, since Donald Trump has been on the scene, because it's nonstop.
The dictionary defines news as a series of words that tend to have the letter X in them a lot. Sometimes the frequency with which the letter X appears increases exponentially. And the tool I use to keep track of all the X's is Ground News, which you can visit via the QR code on the screen. Ground News is a website and an app we sought out to sponsor us, which gathers news from around the world so you can compare coverage and get to the truth. Like this news about how Elon Musk's company XAI acquired Elon Musk's company X in a deal which values X at $33 billion. It's great that the owner of a thing gets to decide how much that thing is worth, I guess. And on Ground News, you can see that sources it identifies as left-leaning and high factuality point out that Elon's X was purchased by another company that Elon owns, whereas some other sources do not do that, opting instead to call it a blockbuster deal. It's easy to X through the X at ground.news/SMN. With that link, you can get 40% off unlimited access, a factuality chart, and see which outlets were on top of the news first. That's ground.news/SMN to get 40% off unlimited access for yourself or someone you know. The X is in the X. I'm so sorry. The link is in the description. Not everything is X.
I want to talk about immigration and the deportations and the detentions because we got some Supreme Court news this week. We're likely going to have more very soon because of all of the emergency requests in the shadow docket that they've got going before them. The Supreme Court lifted the block earlier this week on the Trump administration's ability to use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people, though it was considered generally a kind of cautious victory for him because they did say unanimously, apparently, that individuals are entitled to advance notice and the ability to file habeas petitions. But that information was kind of couched in Sonia Sotomayor's dissent, where she said, all 9 of us agree that you need to do due process, man. So, yeah.
Because of course you do.
It's kind of a technicality, punting it down the field a bit because it was filed in the wrong district.
They're saying we're not going to weigh in yet on the legality of using the Alien Enemies Act to deport people. We're saying that the challenges to the deportations were filed in the wrong jurisdiction. They need to be filed where those people were detained in Texas or something instead of Washington, D.C., which means the Trump administration can just detain them in a place where they think the Court of Appeals is going to rule in their favor.
Does that mean you could just avoid those places, or does that mean that they'll transport you to those places?
They'll transport you. So they can pick you up in Washington, D.C. and bring you to Texas and
then El Salvador.
Then it's El Salvador.
That feels like something that should be taken into consideration when making a ruling such as this, saying that it's filed in the wrong place. But to be clear, this will continue to be discussed and litigated.
This was a narrow ruling, so this is not over. We're still waiting for an emergency ruling on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the ruling to bring him back from El Salvador, which John Roberts said, hold on, let me look at this. And we're just waiting as of right now. And then 2 federal judges, one in Texas and one in New York, blocked the deportations using the Alien Enemies Act, again, since those people had not yet been able to challenge their deportations. So we're now just going in this kind of legal weeds while people are living in hell and uncertainty.
The punditry on this topic is so disgusting and disheartening. and we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to mention how full-throated people are with what a good idea it is to send people to El Salvador with no due process, even American citizens. Obviously, like, you're going to get, with the economy, you're going to get the Benny Johnsons of the world being like, every decision is great. We love this. Oh my God, I'm coming. It's so good. But with the, I'm so sorry, everybody. But with,
I'm so offended,
I'm so sorry.
Cody.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God, I'm coming.
That's what they say.
Merch.
My point is, you see a lot of these people. There's a particular person, Peter Jennings, I believe. He's a real smug
Is he the Jeopardy guy?
No, he's not.
You mean Scott Jennings?
Scott Jennings is on CNN, and he's like the reasonable Republican on CNN. And even last night, he was doing a little bit where he's like going, here's my list of like pet peeves, and it's like, if you're not using a turn signal, straight to El Salvador.
2 or more walking side by side on a sidewalk, you're gone, El Salvador. Recline your seat on an airplane, El Salvador. Disney adults, you're going too. And finally, pronouns in your email signature. Out of here.
The joke is that you're going to be sent to El Salvador, and obviously,
funny.
fun little bit, but they mean it. Like, they're softening the idea and they're making it cutesy so that more people are okay with it. It's normalizing this idea that this is a valid place to send people, whether they are legal immigrants, illegal immigrants, American citizens, non-residents, whatever it is. This is just their project now to make this seem okay. And it's gross.
This is just always how they go about it. I mean, in the campaign, like, you guys are overreacting. This is a joke. We're being funny. But you just say it enough, and then it becomes a part of our culture. This is how we talk about this topic, and it's not a joke anymore. And I think that we should all be wide awake and aware that they don't really joke. They follow through.
Well, my question about this kind of thing is, we've seen again and again that when a judge says, hey, you can't do that, Trump says, I genuinely don't care.
Yeah.
That's not me. I don't know whose name you're saying. It's not mine. I can do whatever I want. And so it seems like there's a couple things that could happen with this. And one is that, like, the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court, seems to be largely just going to go along with whatever he does, and specifically kind of show we don't care. You can destroy the judicial branch's power, right? If the judicial branch has no oversight over the executive branch, like, on some level, it's like, well, what's the point? Like, what next? What does it mean if one part of the state is incapable of exerting power over the other part of the state? If the checks and balances are just truly gone? And I don't know. And so we're watching, as people get sent to El Salvador and then get told, well, it doesn't matter that you say we can't send them because we already did. Like, what then? And I don't have an answer here, but
but it's the right question.
And on some level, I'm like, will the Supreme Court on some level be like, look, we're conservative, but we believe in the rule of law. Mm-hmm. And then if they do, what power can they exert? Because we're no longer in a rule of law country. We're in a rule of raw power country. And as far as I understand, the judicial branch doesn't have access to power, to physical power.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be like, and so therefore everything is meaningless. I'm kind of asking this as a question, like, what's the hope here? What is the mechanism out of this?
I do still feel that, like, I can't help the impulse. It's like this lib impulse where it's like, well, I think, like, Barrett and Roberts and Kavanaugh will do the right thing. And then we'll have a 6-3 ruling that says Trump can't break the law in all these different ways. And that, like, there will be such a groundswell of public outrage if he ignores that it'll be over. I would rule. I'm not trying to talk shit on that. I really want to believe that. And of course, I don't know what will happen. I think John Roberts is very afraid of that showdown of Trump saying, you don't have power over me.
I agree.
That he keeps looking for these narrow ways to be like, I'm going to give you a little bit of what you want, but come on, give us the due process.
We got to be
I think you're spot on with that. It's what I'm thinking. I think they're terrified. I think that the minute they give a ruling that they know he's going to ignore or attempt to ignore, that answers our question, which a lot of us have already answered, about whether or not we are in a constitutional crisis, about whether or not we are totally fucked, how we handle a president such as him who refuses to, follow the rule of law, to follow our country's checks and balances. So I agree, Jonathan. I think that there is a lot of seeing if they can pass the buck for a minute, trying to delay the point where this becomes an explosion and that we can't ignore, that you can't talk your way around, that you can't spin. But it's going to happen sooner or later, or they'll just kowtow, you know?
In which case, it happens by not happening if they're
Exactly.
too afraid of making a ruling. I feel like in some ways, we're all kind of just holding our breath to see, like, when is the state going to protect us from the state? Will the state protect us from the state?
And I'll add that uncertainty, it's abuse. That's like, not to be super woke. I mean, it's mental abuse that we're all going through right now. Individuals, companies, do I have to build a factory here or not? The uncertainty, the chaos is a controlling mechanism.
You can't get your bearings. You can't, like, keeping you in suspense and pivoting back and forth from one thing to another. That can only benefit them, right? And it's very hard to combat that.
Because you can't
other than,
organize
like,
against it.
going to nature and trying to grab. Because, like, I was asking a friend the other day, like, when you're not as so stupidly plugged in as I am, are you able to, like, not think about it? Because I'm not. I mean, you know, we choose to do this. This is our job and stuff. But also, like, my wife, every time she gets home from work, I'm like, did you see this stuff? She's like, no, I'm actually, like, teaching students during the day. I'm not, like, on Blue Sky. And I say, well, here's the stuff from today. And she's like, those words don't mean anything. I don't even want to hear about that. And I kind of envy that. Are people able to experience that right now?
I mean, she is.
Probably no one on this call.
No, she's not. I won't shut up.
You won't let her, yeah.
No, but yeah, people are. And that, at its crux, is both. I mean, I don't begrudge that. I don't, because I think that people need to take care of themselves. And she's got very important things. For example, your wife has got her hands full literally all day.
DHS is trying to get into LAUSD schools and are being told to go away. Sorry.
We elect people so we can live our lives. It's all consuming to get by, to take care of your children, to get to and from work, to pay your bills. Harder now. It's all so overwhelming and all encompassing. And it has been for years, especially now. But people do check out. They have to in order to save their sanity, in order to move about their day-to-day lives. It's part of the reason why it's really hard to break through to the other side, because they're getting their tidbits and then living their life. And then you're like, actually, let me break it down. It's too chaotic. I'm tapping out. Tell me when there's actually something concrete that I can have.
I think that because as you point out, your wife is also doing a thing actively to fight against this administration. One, just by teaching, which is now a radical act. It's probably always been a radical act, but it's a particularly radical act right now. But, you know, like, oh, we're trying to keep the DHS out of the schools or whatever. And so I think it's more of this, like, act local kind of vibe. I think that what we can encourage people is that, look, if you don't want to doom scroll all day for a living, which very few people are blessed enough to have that be their job, you can focus on something concrete that is happening and try to stay a little bit peripherally aware of the big picture. I think it's actually a really good moment to encourage people to, like, look, if you usually kind of stay out of the big picture, you kind of got to pay attention to the big picture right now. Maybe you don't have to pay attention to every up and down of the tariffs are in, the tariffs are out, whatever, right? It might be enough to know we are in a trade war. I was talking to my father about this, and my father does woodworking, and we were talking about this problem, and he was like, you know, it's like, he was showing me his chiseling away at this piece of wood he was working on. And, you know, it sounds like I'm making this up, but it's genuinely a conversation I had with my dad about 2 weeks ago. And he was like, look, all of the power of my palm is being exerted on this one small point, you know, and it is through this one small point that we chisel away this entire thing, you know? And so I actually think it's really good and useful for people to pick a subject of focus. Maybe people who are doing anti-ICE organizing aren't going to be able to keep up with everything. Maybe people who are, you know, preparing in this way or that way or doing all of these things. And then it's our job, more your job than mine. I read history books for a living, but you know, it's our job as, like, communicators about what's happening to kind of provide the big picture, which is necessary, because if everyone's just carving away at these little points, then you don't You don't create an
lose sight
object.
of
You
that.
You need to
literally
see
just
what,
chisel
see
away
what it
wood.
is, yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful example and very well articulated because it's true. We've got our areas of expertise. We've got the amount that we can handle. And there's a lot of pressure and it feels overwhelming. Like, I need to be on top of everything and do your best. But if you can focus your energies onto a specific arena, you're more likely to be productive in that arena and save yourself from burnout.
Yes, save your stability and sanity and be able to continue to function and not feel that chaos.
What else we got, Jonathan? I know we haven't even...
I'll start with Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel is a children's entertainer. She's on YouTube and Netflix now. She's one of the most popular, like, little toddler entertainers in the...
You're about to tell me she's either amazing and in trouble or she's a Nazi. Those are the
She's
two
not a
things that
Nazi.
you're about to tell me.
Well,
She
but
is...
how's it going to get spun? She is the most popular YouTuber, isn't she? She's up there.
I don't know, YouTuber, I think Mr. Beast still, but for toddlers, yes, it's Miss Rachel.
For toddlers, for sure.
She, does videos where, you're singing songs and you're learning how to make sounds and words. But then on her Instagram, she has adults, parents of the kids follow her on Instagram. And every fourth or fifth post on Instagram will be about how it's bad when children in Gaza are getting blown up. She talks about that. And raises money for relief efforts.
I just want to interject that I think that's so fucking rad. She doesn't have to do that. I'm proud of
she
her
does not.
for doing that.
And she has become a target of Zionist groups because of this. And one Twitter account, which is @StopAnti-Semitism, which I think is just a lady from Long Island who's funded by a Zionist group. She is asking the Department of Justice to investigate whether she's acting as a foreign agent by spreading
right?
So my first of the two guesses was correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but honestly, depending on who you're talking to, they maybe would have given a different answer.
Yeah, but they're wrong. So
Yeah, those people are wrong. It's got to be very frightening for her. She also just announced that she had a new baby recently. But yeah, she's asking Stop Anti-Semitism is asking all of their followers to, file these public reports to see if she's acting as a foreign agent and getting paid to spread Hamas propaganda. I really hope this is not worth Pam Bondi's valuable time at the Department of Justice, but she's on Fox News 7 hours a day, so I think she's got plenty of time.
A bunch of dumb bullshit is worth her time, so...
It's wild where this is going and outrageously scary, especially given, well, we're going to talk about social media spying, but in general, president's own words of, again, El Salvador deporting U.S. citizens there who are out of line. So
I would just call it they kidnap you and ship you out. They can't deport a citizen.
They
Good
can
note,
if
that's
they
true.
get out of line. If they get too yippy. So
I mean, I think it's actually important to start naming that what it is. From my point of view, it's always kidnapping when you just arrest people, but that's my own understanding of the world. But it's really, really explicitly, if there's no judicial process happening, if there's no oversight or whatever, it is kidnapping. And I think we should call it what it is.
Call it what it is.
Yeah, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services says it now plans to scan the social media profiles of migrants for, quote, anti-Semitic activity. And the order, here's the specific phrasing they use. It says, this will immediately affect aliens applying for lawful permanent resident status, foreign students, and aliens affiliated with educational institutions linked to anti-Semitic activity. So
that's a lot of qualifiers.
Yeah, so they think if you are a Columbia student who's there on a student visa, I mean, they're going to go through everyone's social.
Because any protest is the activity in question.
I've got a question. This is a facetious question. What is anti-Semitic activity? Does an immigrant on the national stage doing a Heil Hitler twice, does that count?
Probably. I can't see why it wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine someone who spreads anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Or on Twitter.
What if they have hundreds of billions of dollars?
Yeah, what about that?
You should have led with that. You should have led with the fact that they have hundreds of billions of dollars.
Also, what if they're extremely obnoxious and unlikable, but desperate
even
to be
even
liked?
more so, you got to leave them alone if they're one of
perfect.
the most unlikable people on earth. No, they're going after pro-Palestinian activists, or even not really activists. Again, Rumeysa Ozturk just co-wrote one op-ed in the Tufts newspaper a year ago.
I guess it goes without saying, but I'm just going to keep saying it. Protesting what's happening in Gaza and being pro-Palestinian is not anti-Semitism. I haven't said that sentence in a long time because this has been going on for so long. But let's just make that really fucking clear, because it's starting to get confusing about what is or is not anti-Semitic.
Yeah,
co-signed.
My blood's boiling.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. Because also, as we pointed out, like, you know, it was a bipartisan effort to redefine anti-Semitism to this. So if you're, like, for example, a Democrat in Congress and you're like, oh, I can't believe they're doing this. Well, you helped. You need to acknowledge that and maybe reconsider, like, the things you do when you're in power, and consider what those could be used to do to people when you're not in power, or like maybe just like look at that thread that you are a part of, because again, like this phrasing, foreign students and aliens affiliated with educational institutions linked to anti-Semitic activity. So the anti-Semitic activity would be any protest about Gaza.
So even if you're not partaking in those,
right?
But you're affiliated.
There was a protest, a pro-Palestinian protest. So that's the anti-Semitic activity. An educational institution linked to anti-Semitic activity would be any college or campus that had a protest like that, right?
Maybe even a trade school.
It doesn't have to like support like the protest. It just has to have existed. And so if you're a foreign student at a school that had a protest, it seems like that applies to you. Like the wording of that means it applies to you, even if you're not involved in any of it.
They're either bad writers or they're intentionally obfuscating the sentence, right? Because there are two ways to interpret that sentence, and both work grammatically within English, which means it's a badly written sentence.
Right. And if there's orders like that, any law like that, anything like that that has so many interpretations, it's usually intentional, so that you can argue that, well, no, this person, this applies to this person, so we can get rid of them. It's very, very clearly insidious.
Yeah. We've said this a bunch, but they go right, like the third paragraph of this announcement, it's a little press release saying what they're going to do. DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs Tricia McLaughlin says there is no room in the United States for the rest of the world's terrorist sympathizers.
Yeah.
Are we like not even on the news going to question that? Like, what are you talking about, terrorist sympathizers? Let's like literally look at the people you've disappeared so far. Do you want to present any evidence that they're aligned with terrorism?
No, they don't. I think I mentioned this on Monday's episode because that's just how it is. Scott Jennings, who I mentioned earlier, that little piece of shit.
Jeopardy guy.
The Jeopardy guy, Scott Jennings.
It's always been a joke. I know that this is not the Jeopardy guy.
It's not the Jeopardy guy.
I love that you're too earnest to actually say something sarcastic and stick to it.
Yeah,
I genuinely appreciate that about you.
Thank you, Margaret.
It's got to be straightforward. There are all these tweets over the weekend for these protests, and all the tweets are like, look at, I'm going to direct quote, thousands of terror supporters have taken over Washington, D.C., calling for a, quotes, in quotes, global intifada. These people have no business being in America. Scott Jennings, like the idiot he is, quote tweeted it, the enemies of Western civilization today in our nation's capital. These are just people who are on TV, paid to be on TV, and give you your opinions, saying that anybody who's at a protest over the weekend, protesting Donald Trump or what they're doing to Social Security or the tariffs, whatever, you are a terrorist supporter is what they're calling you.
And as
global intifada. They put it in quotes. Nobody said that.
And as many of our viewers pointed out, intifada just means uprising.
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily imply.
But if you have the words terrorist supporter with that, then that's
sure.
How,
obviously,
that's how it works. That's what they're trying to communicate. You know, they know how.
Okay, I think we have time for one more topic with maybe a little subtopic. If I know our guy Cody, he's gonna want to do it.
So I have mentioned this before. I forget if it was on Monday or Thursday or which episode of this show I just said it. Elon Musk and his little goons continue to lie about Social Security And I wanted to point out this specific lie when it happened because it's so egregious and so obvious. And if you hear it and you hear the actual facts, you're like, wait, that's a blatant lie they told. There's this whole presentation they gave, Apple style, like Tim Apple up there with his little turtleneck. And they're like, look at all the information we have. And it was basically showing a chart of all of these, it was like leaked secret information that they got from Social Security office that shows all of these, in the presentation, it's presented as these illegal immigrants, these undocumented immigrants who have been given Social Security numbers in order to vote. That's not what it is. It is a chart of non-citizens getting Social Security numbers, which we have known that they get legally because if they apply for work permits, if they're non-citizens, they're here, they're documented immigrants. They're here doing all the legal things that you're supposed to do. And they apply for a work permit and they can get a Social Security number so that they can pay into Social Security and not get those benefits back.
Right.
Because that's how it works.
It's a big part of immigration here, and we have always taken that money.
Big part of it. And in the presentation, one of the guys doing it is like, and this is, by the way, like my parents are immigrants and they're illegal immigrants and I'm all for legal immigration, but this is about America. So they don't explicitly say it's undocumented immigrants, but it's heavily implied because, well, if you're saying that you believe in legal immigration, but this is something else, what are you saying? Also, there was the program that they get these Social Security numbers was started by Trump. So what are we doing? Also, the jump in numbers received in 2024 was because they made it easier to do. If you apply for a work permit, you can get a Social Security number easily.
Immigration is a complicated topic. There's lots of things to consider. And yeah, Biden, I'm not a big Biden fan, y'all. I think we all know that. But I get frustrated when this conversation specifically, because all of it ultimately is intended to make the argument that Democrats are trying to get illegals over the border so they can vote for Democrats, which, first off, there's citation needed. You think that they're just going to automatically vote for Democrats. That's a whole other conversation. But that's not what's happening. More people came to the border, more and more, through Trump and then in Biden because of pick your poison. Lots of reasons why people are coming to the United States, feeling unsafe, trying to make money, XYZ.
Climate change.
Climate change. We had more demands in labor because people were not wanting the different jobs. So there's job opportunities. People are coming here. Biden attempted to expand, or this is an attempt to expand how people can get here legally. So yes, giving out people their Social Security numbers, giving them work permits. But this wasn't some big fucking plan to get people to vote. And what they are not showing is any proof at all that people were actually voting. They say it's very alarming. Look at this jump. Look at what's happening. They're obviously busing people in so that they can vote. They're not. That's not what's happening. And if there is literally, if there are instances where people were voting en masse, you better show us that.
Yeah, there's no evidence. There's no evidence, and everything they say leading up to the claim of like, oh, they're using it to vote. Everything before that was a lie. It's all this big lie that they're telling with no evidence, and the evidence they have is misrepresented and not the truth. And then they get to the evidenceless piece of information, which is also their voting. It is all this just big, long process to lie and continue this narrative that the Democrats, they believe in immigration to get them to vote and all this sort of stuff. And this is all a recap, so I'm sorry, folks, if you've heard this before. But I think it's a really insidious, complicated lie that they're telling on purpose. And you have to sort of know these programs to know, like, okay, but they changed the program to make it easier. That's why the jump happens. Or like, well, they're non-citizens. We know that's how they get these Social Security numbers.
A lot of these same people say that they're fine with immigration as long as it's done the right way.
That's what this is. But my point is, I like pointing out this lie. I was like, this is going to seep in and it's going to be entrenched in the right-wing media sphere because that's how this stuff happens. Usually it's because of Elon Musk. And he was part of this presentation, but they say these really sometimes complicated lies.
He doesn't pay taxes, so he does exactly what he wants. Immigrants to not pay taxes.
Who admits to have come here illegally, actually, for a while, but whatever.
Did he admit that, or did he?
Oh, his brother
did. He shush Kimball.
He shushed his brother. That's right.
Yeah.
His brother's name is Kimball?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. It's fine.
Epstein buddy, Kimball Musk. Anyway, my point is that there's all this big lie to sell you this complete bullshit thing. And what do we have yesterday? But finally, a Fox News piece about all of these illegal immigrants coming and taking social security numbers, and they're being given social security numbers by Biden when they shouldn't be getting these, and then they're using them to vote. And then you have Benny Johnson, who I mentioned earlier as the guy who comes from the tariffs. He's got multiple tweets. Social security numbers handed out to criminal aliens just in the past 4 years alone. They're not criminal aliens. They're non-citizens. Those are completely two different categories. Obviously, we've talked about how, like, if you label any immigrant criminal, it's like, well, they're here illegally. Well, no, they're not. They're here from asylum. Well, they shouldn't be. That's a crime. They're trying to frame anybody here as their existence is a crime. But I just wanted to sort of point out, like, this very insidious thing that happens all the time with all kinds of lies. They do this thing, it trickles down, and then suddenly it's on Fox News, and then Benny Johnson is out there being like, look at these criminal aliens getting handed social security numbers, instead of the truth, which is legal non-citizens applying for and receiving social security numbers so that they can work and pay taxes and then not receive those benefits, because that is how the system works. And I don't know, fuck that guy, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, this guy's been making the rounds.
He said money was pointless, and it's actually good to lose money. So stop whining about all of the money you're losing. It's fake anyway. It builds character. And then the next day he's like, see, the stock market went up. Oh, you people panicking. Oh, we were right all along. Well, no, you weren't right, because you said that the tariffs would stay in place and then things would get better. He paused the tariffs. He blinked and stopped. So that's why it went back up. You're not right.
Cody, don't have a heart attack right now.
Fine.
That would be great for the numbers.
Great for the numbers. If I ever do, I'll make sure to turn the camera on for you.
Do you want to react to this other guy real quick before we end? This is obviously from a full podcast appearance. Don't worry, it's not out of context. This is what...
It's not out of...
This is a guy, if you don't know him, it's Chamath Palihapitiya. He's a venture capitalist. He was like an early executive at Facebook and then became a venture capitalist, and he's just like a rich...
he hosts the All In podcast.
Yeah, he co-hosts the All In podcast.
I hate when people use books as decoration when they're not real books.
Those blank books. Yeah. Those spineless books right there.
Yeah.
Like, what?
This is one thing I'll tell you about the Trump administration, which is totally different. Okay, I was a lifelong Democrat, okay? I was a mega donor to the Democrats. Like dinner with Obama level donor, okay? I couldn't get a fucking phone call return from the White House to save my life. The only thing that happened to me was I made an off-color comment about like something in China, and I had the Biden administration like basically say something, like essentially put out a press release basically saying I was like, mean. That's all I got for millions of dollars. That, you know what I mean? Like,
for being honest.
I mean, I was like, hey man, there's like a lot of problems in America. Like, talk to me about the fentanyl crisis before we talk about everything else.
I want to point out that he said he couldn't get so much as a phone call from the White House right after he said, like, I was having dinner with Obama because of how much I was donating. So there's the contradiction right there. And he's suggesting that he fell out of favor with the Biden White House because of a comment about China. That was because in 2022, in an episode of his podcast, he said nobody cares about the Uyghurs over and over again when people were talking about what was happening to the Uyghurs in China. And I didn't find any Biden press release saying he was bad. The basketball team he co-owns as a minority owner, the Golden State Warriors, had to distance itself from him because of that.
But Biden didn't do this thing. It really just seems like they have such a chip on their shoulder because of some imagined slight that just doesn't happen, and then it sends them on this trajectory to...
Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm interpreting this as I spent a lot of money and I don't get influence.
Yeah.
Well, so that is what he's saying. So like
you
the rest,
know-
there's another part of the quote where he talks about, because he's saying like, I couldn't get a phone call from the White House, but the Trump administration is totally different. There's not a single person there you can't get on the phone and talk to. What he's saying is, as a mega donor to the Democrats, I wasn't able to influence them. As opposed to now, as a mega donor to the Republicans, I'm able to have constant contact with them if I want to. He's saying that you can just buy these politicians as like this. It's a weird, like, it's weird that he's saying this out loud as like a point of like, actually, it's awesome because as a mega donor giving millions of dollars, I have access to them now because that's what they're paying for.
I heard Andrew Schultz on a podcast, and while there was lots of stuff I disagreed with, I was like, he seems like there's some things that he's like general points he's making. I was like, I would like to have a conversation with this guy and really grill him on this point, X point, whatever. But one of the things they're talking about is, you know, money in politics and Democrats being a part of, you know, so corporate. And yet we're sitting here having this interview with no pushback to this man who is unfathomably wealthy and literally complaining about how with Joe Biden, he didn't get to influence policy.
Yep.
And yet with Donald. So what are we talking? This is what I'm feeling my heart race again of
it's
the frustration.
Absurd. It's literally in our Joe Rogan episode. There's that clip where he's talking about all the money that Democrats get from these big corporations, and then he's fact checked. It's like actually the wealthiest people give more money to Republicans. It's like, okay, but I mean corporations, and they find that information. Like, okay, actually corporations overwhelmingly give to Republicans too, and he doesn't like adjust his opinion at all. It's like they have this narrative of like, well, Democrats are corporate and Republicans are working class. But then you have this fucking guy being like, I spent millions of dollars on the Democrats. They didn't give me the time of day. But the Republicans pick up the phone whenever because you paid them millions of dollars. It's the thing that they complain about constantly being broadcast to their faces and they can't see it.
Well, you know how we know that this man stands for nothing because, to go back to the most important thing about this, the books, the fact that they're faced back, you know, they're either fake books entirely or they're clearly meant to symbolize I am smart, I read books, without actually taking the risk to say, these are the books on my shelf.
I've read this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like we don't get to know his opinion by looking at books. And not that what's on someone's shelf should indicate who they are, but it's cowardice. It is cowardice to not show. I know I'm making a big deal out of this, but to not show the books. And then also he starts it off by being like, well, I used to have, you know, I used to believe in one thing, but I changed my mind about morality because I didn't feel like I was being treated like a special kid. Yep. Like, you know, like
I can't make jokes about the Uyghurs.
You got like the Andreessen stuff. Every one of these, like venture capitalists, any of these tech right guys, it all comes down to like, yeah, I wasn't like treated the way I deserve to be because of all the money I have.
Everyone at my company treats me super nice, and that's how the Secretary of State should treat me. He doesn't have anything better going on.
Yeah, I earned it by having the money.
There's a part of this clip later where one of the four guys on the couch is
in the
like,
fake castle.
Yeah, in the fake castle is like, devil's advocate isn't that good that you can't just because the amount of money, just because you gave a lot of money doesn't give you access to like influence them. And Chamath disagrees.
Sorry, devil's advocate, should being a mega donor, I mean, I guess I get your point of view, but couldn't it also just be like, no, we're not going to be biased just because a person donated money. We're not going to just answer the phone whenever he calls.
You think I was like, you know, stupid 5 years ago and all of a sudden tried to like start to build national champions like now?
Yeah.
Dude, man, I've been in the grind for fucking 25 years here, paying my taxes. I fucking paid, you know, more than most people.
Yeah. So irrespective of the donation,
I've been trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to favor myself. It's like, even just to explain, like, here's what's happening on the ground. Do you want to know?
Like, openly disagrees and is like, I put in so much time with these guys. And he's like,
so
listen, I only had dinner with Obama twice.
It's so embarrassing, pathetic, and like blatant. It's like, what, like, seriously, like that comedian, like the only reasonable person in that crowd, like, and he's so delicate with his question, like, to play devil's advocate, like that sounds maybe
sounds like
That's
I
how it
wanna
should
go
be.
on
And like what
a
you're
chat.
doing,
Bad.
like it's
I want
wild.
Andrew Schultz invite me on a show with you and Chamath.
He's like, I would like to survive the Nuremberg trials part 2. So what if we hedge my bets here a little bit?
It's like if I'm trying to be like as delicate as I can, but
We need to wrap this up because Margaret has to go record her show.
oh, so fancy.
Margaret, okay, will you tell our listeners where they can find you, where they can buy your books? Because books are important.
And display
you better
them.
display them on the back of your Zoom call,
I
my
know.
friends.
But, although these days maybe it's risky because we are literally entering the time of thought crime. But if you want to stand up, you can have a Margaret Killjoy book on your shelf behind you. I write fantasy and science fiction primarily, and like kind of like horror. And my current thing that's coming out is book 3 in my Danielle Kane series. They're all very short novellas. You can actually hear me read them to Robert Evans on Cool Zone Media Book Club if you don't want to read the first 2 in the normal way. And the third book is called The Immortal Choir Holds Every Voice. And Danielle Kane books are punk rock Scooby-Doo. They're like a squatter anarchist traveling around in a kind of monster of the week format and learning about sort of magic is real but terrifying. And that comes out in June. You can pre-order it now. If you pre-order a signed copy from a bunch of different places, you'll be able to get a signed. If you pre-order it, you'll get a signed copy. But then, if you like podcasts, which you might like, I have a history podcast called Cool People Who Did Cool Stuff, where I talk about rebels and radicals throughout history who are working to try and make the world a better place. And it's kind of funny because it's the same model as like every other podcast where it's like a bad thing happened in history. But it turns out every time there's a bad thing, there's people trying to do something about the bad thing, And so that's what I try and focus on last week I did one about a psychiatric hospital in France that armed partisans, but it was decided by the patients to put themselves at risk to try and do that. And it's like also ties into like multiple civil wars and also the history of philosophy and all that kind of stuff. So that's Cool People Who Do Cool Stuff. Yeah, that's what I got.
You should check it out. It's a great show. That's it. We're done. We're
done. We're out of here.
here.
Out of here. We're out of here.
But one last thing I have to say.
What?
Very important to me to say this.
Do it. Say it. Hurry up. Got it.
We love you very much.
Are you looking for your next case? Pluto TV has all your favorite crime dramas streaming for free.
We're gonna need some backup.
Which means suspense is free.
Very cool.
Watch CSI New York, Criminal Minds, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, and SWAT all for free.
You can't outrun this.
Someone is gonna pay for all this crime. But it's not gonna be you.
Take care of business, fellas.
Watch all the cases, all for free, from all your favorite devices.
We got you.
Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.